We're coming up on Memorial Day weekend, and it's time to do internal checks on your fantasy teams. We'll tell you just how to do that. Plus, we'll have waiver wire, pitcher preview, the injury report, and Manhattan Henge? That's all coming up next on Beat the Shift. And welcome to another episode of the Beat the Shift podcast. I am your host, Ariel Cohen, and with me as always, Ruvain Guy. How are you, Ruvain?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. I'm a little hoarse here. A lot of baseball action for me. No guest today. Doing a little bit of a shorter show, but we want to get you some waiver wire and pitcher preview picks as well as the injury update. I was at the Yankee game today. Watched Clay Holmes finish out a very nice Luis Gil outing. I don't know how that guy is doing it. To me, it's smoke and mirrors, but he's doing it against maybe a struggling Seattle offense today. What about you? Getting to any ball games lately?
Not yet. I'm going to get there. I haven't had the time yet. I've been busy. My son just came back from a baseball trip to Columbus, Ohio. He was in a tournament, and they finished. They came home with a trophy. Let's put it that way. They didn't win, but they came home with a trophy, so that was good.
Was it a participation trophy?
No, it was not a participation trophy, and it wasn't a bowling trophy either. So you don't have to worry about that. It was an actual trophy, so yeah.
Aha! But, of course, your son's greatest challenge will be this coming Tuesday, as they have rescheduled the rain out between your son's team and my son's team. Tuesday, we play each other.
That's going to be very interesting. I'm going to try to get there on time. I'm working, and the game starts a little early for me. So hopefully I'll be there on time, but we'll see how it works.
All right, I will be there. Yeah, my kid's doing well. He leads his team in hits. Very, very proud of him. So we'll see.
And my son is pitching pretty well so far. He hasn't allowed an earned run. His BABIP is high, so hopefully that'll come back into play. But he's been pitching pretty well, so I'm looking forward to watching him pitch against your son.
All right. Well, I can't wait. Hope to see you there. Meanwhile, we got softball. Oh my God, I had the most amazing week this week. 3 shutouts in a row. Got an 8-0 win on Sunday in our Sunday league to wrap it up. We finished 7-1, just one hiccup of a game in the rain, mind you. But it was a shutout until it rained, and then after the 6th inning, just couple little dinks, an error, a bad ump call, and the next thing we know, we're down by 2. And then night league, we had a 2 games back-to-back doubleheader. 1-0 win in the first one against a really good team. That was incredible. And then a 10-0 win against not such a great team.
So it sounds like you're pitching a lot like Ranger Suarez right now.
Oh my goodness, Ranger Suarez doing quite well these days. Not bad, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And by the way, for those, I know we talk about, I went to the Eclipse and all. If you guys are in New York, I might go to this. At least I'm going to go one of these. Manhattan Henge. May 29th, 30th, 2 days you can view it. You can see the sun set across Manhattan. Just line up somewhere in the east side of Manhattan. I usually go to Tudor Place at 42nd Street, just east of 1st Avenue, and you can literally see the sun set in Manhattan, which doesn't happen too often. It only happens then, and it'll come back July 11th and 12th. I will tell you, it's like with the Eclipse, I used to tell people that it's something that you should see once in a lifetime. I think a sunset is something somebody should see once a year. It's one of the special, serene things that just give you a sense of where you are in the world. See a sunset once a year, and why not make it in Manhattan if you're there?
That makes sense. I mean, I've never seen it. My schedule hasn't always worked out that way, but I do see pictures of it. And if you're not able to get to Manhattan, try to go online and see a picture of it because it's really amazing.
Yeah, definitely. All right. We're going to do a little bit of strategy here as we are getting to Memorial Day. And this is about the time of the year where you do want to have your Memorial Day checkpoint on checking your team. Before here, really, if your team was in first place, second place, fourth place, your categories, nothing really mattered as much. You're getting the best value. But at a certain point, you really do need to take, in Roto that is, to take stock of your standings. I used to tell people that June 5th was always the date that had the the results in the league as of June 5th become highly correlated with the season end results. I think that date has moved a little bit earlier as the season has moved. It might be June 3rd or so. But the point being, it's about a week after Memorial Day weekend. So it is time to take stock of your team. So I'll throw it out to you, Ruben. What exactly are you taking stock of?
I'm taking stock of where I am in the standings. I know people think it's kind of early. It's only end of May, but if you're way back in the standings, now's the time to think about maybe taking a risk or dropping a player that isn't, doing what you think they should be doing because it's 2 months in the season. It's unlikely they're going to turn around and have like an amazing next 3 months. What you're seeing now is basically what you're getting, unless you have one of those Matt Carpenter like chili moments where he makes a chili and all of a sudden he's amazing. But that's not common. So what you see is what you get at this point, and what we were calling flukes for the first 2 months are not really flukes. So what you have to really look for is to see where you can gain points, where you can possibly lose points in your standings, and just base your roster on that. And I think you can have a pretty good idea if you're pretty far behind, let's say in power, but you're doing well in batting average and runs. Maybe just make a trade or look for, I wouldn't say punt the statistic, but it's getting close to that time when you would think about possibly doing that, especially if you want to try to get back into the standings.
You think it's early enough to decide to punt at Memorial Day weekend?
Certain statistics, yes, because
Really?
yes, I mean, why not? If your team is injury riddled and you have no chance of, let's say, having a lot of saves. Let's say, oh, your closers are hurt. Let's say you picked Alzolay and you had Evan Phillips and you weren't able to get the replacements. If you don't have that many saves and you're really really falling behind, chances are you're not going to pick up that guy who's going to get you the 20 or 25 saves that you're going to be missing. And chances are you're not going to, it may be worthwhile just to, not, I wouldn't say punt, but sort of give up or don't look actively and just, spend your fab money elsewhere.
I guess if you're taking stock of your team, you do need to consider the strategy. We've had this kind of question discussion in years past. The general consensus is it's a little too early to do that, but you do need to take stock and to see just how off your team is. A question though for you: is it more important? Because I've talked about marginal points. Like if I've always said towards later in the year, it's not just how far up or how far you're down, it's how many people are around you that you can either quickly gain points or quickly lose points, like how tight the category is. Is it early enough to just focus on that, or are you looking for categories where you just have 1-2 points that you can make a big gain in? I mean, because technically, like if you're 10th out of 12th in ERA, right? Are you looking at that as a category of I can get back into the hunt because I have a lot of points to gain in this category, or are you surely and only looking at how tight the category is and the marginal gains?
Well, the question is, I think, really, if you can get back into those categories that you're so far behind. Like if you're in an NFBC style league where there's no trading, how are you getting back into how are you getting back into the power category? How are you getting back into, like I mentioned, the saves category? It's very hard to, because you're not going to get those guys in the waiver wire. It's very hard to do that. So it's best, I think, to look in the areas where teams are bunched in the same area for the statistics. I think that's where you can gain the most, because not only would you be gaining some, but the teams above you will be losing. And once you're already so far behind in other statistics, it's hard to frog leap over the other teams. It's just so much harder. I mean, what do you think?
So I think it's a little bit of both when we're talking about the Memorial Day checkpoint. I think you do have to see which categories are subject to gain quickly and to lose quickly. But I do think that you have to see where you are in the standings and where you can gain. If you are in seventh place and you see that ERA and WHIP, have a lot to gain, you can alter your strategy now, right? It's total points to gain. See where you think you can top off in. Oh, my goodness, saves. How is that going? Where do I think I can end up on? Do I need more help from the waiver wire? Do I need to do a trade, right? You have to evaluate what you need to do. And trading, to me, you got to start doing the trades now if you haven't already. I know some people, we know Ian Kahn trades the second that the auction is over, but if you're not trading by now to get rid of your deficiencies and to really revamp your team, it's going to be too late. You're not going to be able to make up in Roto if you trade a month later from now.
Well, listen, in the league we're in together in GDD, I'm already sending out trade offers for categories that I need that I know I'm going to be deficient in. But when I look back at the first couple of trades trade offers I sent out, I realized, wait a second, is this really going to hurt me or is it going to help the other team more? And I realized, maybe that trade is not the best, especially if you do it this early in the season. Maybe you should wait just a little bit longer to do a trade. I mean, if you're really far behind, then yes, this is the time to be aggressive and everything like that. But if you think that you're going to make incremental increases in a certain statistic based on the trade you make, is it worth what you're giving up? Because right now, when you're accumulating stats, you've accumulated maybe a third worth of the season. If you trade away one of your major pieces of your team, you're going to end up losing that statistics that you're gaining, and just because everyone over time will catch up to you. So you have to weigh the positives and negatives of trading away some assets that you have to try to catch up in another asset.
Yeah, you also have to evaluate, what went wrong and why. Like we're in an NFBC league together, and we have Justin Steele and Framber Valdez on the same team, and we picked up Hector Neris in the middle, right? So the team like that, our pitching has been gaining, right? There's not much to do. We know we're behind, but it was because we had injury, and now we're catching up, and we know that the trajectory is up. You need to evaluate, what the trajectory of your team is, because the first 2 months might be very different than what the next 2 months are, depending upon what went right and what went wrong. If you had Julio Rodriguez, the guy's got to bounce back for something later in the year, right? You have to know that.
So you're trying to balance being aggressive, being patient at the same time. Then that's what you're saying.
Yeah, you have to know. You have to know where you have to be patient. You also have to know, which categories you might have a small deficiency only because of randomly bad events up to date. But in reality, it's actually going much better, right? You have to take good stock of your team. By the way, you mentioned GDD. You're in first place. Look who's in second, catching up to you.
Yes, you've caught up. You still have a ways to go, but
Yeah.
but like I told you a couple weeks ago, in this league, I'm in first place. I have a pretty decent sized lead right now, but I'm very nervous with the lead that I have because I know that right now I may have a little bit of smoke and mirrors points. So I'm a little bit nervous about what's going on. So this is the time where I'm actually looking just to try to bolster the categories I'm doing well in and not really ignore the categories I'm doing poorly in, but just to maintain where I am. And I think that's the way if you're doing well in your league, I think that's what you should do. You shouldn't just sit on your laurels and hope everything's to the way of the season because you're going to get an injury during the course of the year. Everyone goes through injuries, and you have to be able to weather it. And if you have a backup plan just in case, it'll help and pay off in the end.
Yeah, you've got 115 points. Derek Carty and I, who I do the league together with, we've got 100. Everybody else 92 and below. But our team is gaining. I mean, Nate Lowe, that was a calculated risk. We took him at a cheap price because he was out, knowing that we won't get him for the first month. But look at that. He's now come on strong, big value. We're getting his full value now. He's helped us. We know Kevin Gaussman isn't going to be this bad, right? Things like that. We know our trajectory of our team is growing. So you got to pay attention to that.
And the injured players are coming back also. The people who are injured, let's say, who are in the 60-day IL or in the IL for a couple weeks, a lot of big names are going to be coming back soon. I know on my team, I'm getting back a couple of big players. Lane Thomas is coming back soon. Nadia Valli's coming back soon. So those guys are going to bolster my roster even more. I think you're getting your catcher back soon. Sean Murphy's coming back. So,
Yes, yes.
you have to see exactly what's going on because you may have been waiting on these players. You have to also temper your expectations for these guys because when they come back, you have to decide when you're putting them back in. Are they going to start off hot? Are they going to start off cold? Do you start the pitchers right away? There's a fine balance of what you need to do, and sometimes, again, I mentioned patience. It's patience with those guys who come back. Don't jump right away. Sometimes the hitters maybe can stand going right away, but the pitchers, you may want to pump the brakes a little bit.
Yeah. So again, as always, it's really league dependent and situation dependent. It's hard for us to give you a one size fits all answer of do this, other than point to some players. But hopefully we're giving you some nuggets and thought processes. Again, it's the marginal points. If you see a category and oh my goodness, there's 5 quick points with 4 stolen bases, you need to be pounding that stolen bases on the waiver wire, right? If you've got a sizable lead in stolen bases, take your foot off the brake very slightly to play a power hitter for a week, right? And then take stock the following week. I mean, you really should be taking stock each and every week when you're doing your waiver wire, right? If you're doing your pickups and trades and stuff, you need to be taking stock of where you are at all points. But if you haven't done it by now, Memorial Day is a good reminder to really do a thorough dive of every single team, and that's what I'd be doing this weekend.
But it's not panic mode yet. It's still too early.
Right,
A lot of
right.
things going to happen. It's only a third of the way in the season so far, so it's not panic mode, but just to restock and get an idea what's going on.
There you go. So don't panic. Just check it and stay the course. All right. We'll do some waiver wire picks. Ruvain, who is somebody or a couple people that you're interested for this week?
Well, I got a couple players and a couple of players who are actually coming back from injury, and actually a couple of Pirates, which is interesting. Alec Burleson, I'm going to start with. Alec Burleson in St. Louis. He's running an 8-game hit streak right now. In his last 6 games, he's batting .375 with 1 homer, a stolen base, and 4 runs. He's only 23% on CBS, and he's usually platooning, but he's a strong platoon. He's a lefty hitter. And right now, the way that things are going, the Cardinals are going to play the hot hand. They have a lot of injured or coming back from injury or underperforming outfielders right now, and if they get a hot hand, they're just going to keep playing it, even if it's a lefty on lefty, lefty on righty. So I think Alec Burleson is a great pickup right now. He's only 23% on, like I mentioned. So if you need an outfielder, I know outfield can be kind of shallow sometimes on the waiver wire. If he's still available, he's a definite pickup for me. On the Pirates, I have 2 guys actually. Nick Gonzalez, one of their top prospects. He's only 12% on the CBS. And the last week he's batting .308 with a home run, and he's batting .273 with 2 homers and a stolen base on the year. But in AAA so far this year, in the first month and a half, he was batting .358 with 4 home runs. He is one of the top prospects. They tried to bring up last year. He didn't do that well. They sent him back down. He's back up now. He's getting playing time. So he's a guy to think about, especially if you need a middle infielder. And if you need another outfielder, another guy who just came back from the Pirates is Ji-Hwan Bae. He just made his Major League debut this week for this year, for his season debut. He already has a stolen base. And remember, last year in 111 games, he had 24 stolen bases before he got hurt. He may take some playing time away from the other outfielders in Pittsburgh, so if you have any other outfielders there, be aware of that. And Ji-Hwan Bae, if you need stolen bases, he's a guy to go after.
Here's a couple players. Luke Raleigh. I saw him today. I think we did mention him on the show last week.
Yes.
He's still staying hot. He didn't do well today, but he has been hot all week. And he's a guy that in a pinch, in a 15-team mixed league, that's the right depth to get him and, injury replacement until you get your guy. Will Benson. He's batting .191. That might be real. He might be one of these, 200, 220 guys. 6 homers, 8 stolen bases this year. We're talking 20-20 power speed blend. Think Chris B. Young type. And by the way, do you know why? Do you know, Ruvain, why I say Chris B. Young? Why I put his middle initial in there?
Because he's not a pitcher.
Well, when you're doing projections and you're grabbing data sources like me, and there's 2 Chris Youngs, Chris R. Young, the pitcher that pitched for the Mets and then pitched against the Mets in the World Series.
And then won a World Series ring with the Rangers as their general manager.
Yeah, that guy. That's Chris R. Young, so I remember Chris Young as Chris B. Young because you have to have some way to differentiate the data. But anyways, that type it does play in deeper mixed leagues, so do watch out for that. Josh Bell, I don't understand why he's available in over 60% of CBS leagues. We know he's been struggling. We know he's on a poor offensive team. Maybe he gets traded to a better situation. In any case, he's batting in the middle of the lineup. He's been better over the last couple of weeks. We know that he's capable. We know that he's rosterable and playable in even 10-team leagues at times. So he should not. He is way, way underowned. Pick him up if he is available. Edwin Diaz has been struggling for the Mets the last couple of weeks, crying in the locker room after one. So he's going to get his act together. But until then, Adam Ottavino. I know we mentioned Reed Garrett a bunch of times, who that's a great option. But Adam Ottavino might actually come in for the save. So if you are in a deep league or an NL only type league, Adam Ottavino might be good for a saver there for the next couple of weeks.
And he's been pitching well this year so far, so it's not like he's a complete zero either. He's a good middle reliever.
Yeah, no, he's pitching well. Mets are relying on him as the de facto setup man so far. Reed Garrett has been the high leverage guy, right? So Ottavino has been in the save situation. The Mets are using Reed Garrett as the high leverage. It might be the save situation, right? It might be the last inning, but where it's not, and Reed Garrett comes in earlier, Ottavino would be the guy who's closing.
But the problem is they haven't had any save situations in the last week. They've lost 7 of the last 9. They're not in any games. That's a problem. So
Well, they've had some save situations, but Mr. Diaz blew it.
That's true also. He blew his last three saves, yes.
Yeah. Noel Marte, we mentioned last week. Now's the time to pick him up. Not a better type of prospect slash upside guy that I can think of that's freely available in many leagues right now. Francisco Alvarez for the Mets. He had a great start to the year, great power, looked great in spring training. His defense has been great. Coming back soon, so in general, you don't want to pick up these catchers. You don't want to have too many on the roster, but he's the number one catcher, so it might be the time to pick him up now because he won't be cheap if he is available in your league soon.
Yep, he should be back in about I say mid-June, like third week in June or something like that. So he is coming back soon, and they're getting almost nothing out of their catcher position, so he's going to slot right back in. And plus, he got hurt on his catching hand. It wasn't his throwing hand, so it may take a little bit longer for him to get into catching. They may have him DH a little bit, but we'll see how that works also because they have JD Martinez.
All right, and before we do the pitcher preview, it's time for the Injury Gurus Trivia of the Week.
So, Ariel, this is just for you. You know how we always talk about Austin Gomber, and I mentioned Austin Gomber last week as a possible pickup. Last week, this past week, when he pitched so far, he had a career-high 8 innings, 1 run, 5 hits, no walks, 6 strikeouts, and lowered his ERA for the season to 2.76, making him the 6th pitcher in Rockies history with a sub-3 ERA through 10 starts. Can you name the others?
Oh, wow. I used to root for the Rockies a lot.
Which is why you should get at least 1 or 2 of them. If you don't get at least 1 or 2, I am going to be uberly disappointed.
Yeah. It's not, what's his name? It's not Julius Chassin?
No.
No.
Don't think too hard. Don't think too hard about it. You should get one because, just think about...
What's that guy who bounced around a little bit after? Yeah, that's one stellar year that he like a .5 ERA through a bunch of starts. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, he pitched for Baltimore.
What's his name?
You're getting there.
What's the guy's name? I can't remember.
Ubaldo Jimenez.
Yeah, Ubaldo Jimenez.
Yes. Okay.
All right,
other
so
one.
Wait. Okay.
The other one has to do with their famously great schools.
Yeah, all right. Mike Hampton was going to be my next guess.
Yes, that's it. You may be able to get one more. I don't think you're going to get 2 others.
Brett Saberhagen?
No.
David Meade? Going way back?
No. Well, you're in the right time frame.
Okay. Lance Painter.
No, because he was a reliever, then he was a starter and the reliever, so no. But okay, the 2 you're not going to get are Roger Bailey in 1997 and Marvelous Marvin Freeman in 1994 in the Rockies' second year of existence.
Give me a hint for the others. Give me a hint for the others.
There's one more. There's one more, and he pitched as a reliever last couple of years, I believe, for the Cubs, and then he was in long relief for a while. I don't know how else to describe this guy.
Oh boy.
He's not in baseball anymore. He retired a couple of years ago.
Okay.
He was always on the waiver wire. You can always get him on the waiver wire.
Something like Jorge De La Rosa, one of those guys?
No, Tyler Chatwood.
I was about to say Tyler Chatwood.
He did it twice, which is crazy. But that brings me back to Austin Gomber. He's only 9% owned in CBS. He's pitched 59 innings this year so far. Like I mentioned, 2.76 ERA, 1.11 WHIP, and 41 strikeouts. Right now, he's on target for a possible 2-start for this week. He's supposed to be pitching against Cleveland, against pitcher whose last name is Curry. I'm not even going to bother trying to go for his first name. Zagvion Curry. He was the one who took Carlos Carrasco's spot in the rotation, and he's also playing the Dodgers. I don't love the Dodgers, and that's where you can get Gombered probably. But the way he's been pitching so far, you may want to pick him up and just spot start him. But he's a guy who so far he's actually, maybe he figured it out. And I know we don't love picking up Rockies pitchers, but he's the only guy I see out there right now that's, I think, worthwhile to start.
And Gomber, Gomber himself, he's playing Cleveland and the Dodgers. I don't like the Dodgers start, but Even at home, he's been good this year. I mean, the joke was you got Gombered, but he's actually been one of the Rockies' best pitchers the last couple of years.
He has been their best pitcher. He's been getting all the strikeouts, and except for those blowups when everyone, he does really well, everyone picks him up and then he blows up. Besides those starts, if you take those one or two starts out, he's actually been a pretty good mediocre pitcher. If that's something, he's been good. He's a good waiver wire guy and a good spot start guy.
By the way, if you haven't picked up Alek Manoah, I know I've mentioned him the past couple of weeks. Look what he did this week: 7 innings, 1 walk, 1 hit, 7 strikeouts versus the Rays. He's playing the White Sox this week, and then to start Baltimore and Oakland. Yeah, he should be owned. If he's available in your league, you gotta pick him up. If you want to be trepidate, I guess you're playing him against the White Sox, right? If are you picking him up and playing him moving this week?
If it's against the White Sox, yes, I'd pick up anybody. The only thing I would say is be a little careful because Luis Robert is going to be coming back soon off of the injured list, so they're going to add a little bit of thump there. But otherwise, it's still the White Sox, and the bottom third of that lineup is just atrocious. The starting pitchers are not that good, so there's a chance of a win whenever you play the White Sox at this point.
Then you got Tyler Miguel from the Mets. Looked pretty good the last when upon his return. He has 2 starts this week, although it's the Dodgers and Arizona. Both are home though. One is the Memorial Day game, which I might actually go to. It's an afternoon game on Monday. That'll be fun if I can make it out to that. But yeah, he's somebody who might be good for this season until he gets hurt again, of course. But that's somebody there. And I mentioned Kyle Gibson, more for points leagues, I think, than Roto. But he tends to go 6+ innings. He's under-owned. He's only 40% owned on CBS. He's got a start at Cincinnati this week, which is not great. Then he's 2 start at Houston versus Colorado. Especially in a points league, he should be picked up. He's a streaming option at worst, but he is steady in the points league. So Kyle Gibson for those of you who play in those formats.
And also, there's one other guy I just want to mention. I just remembered him because I was looking at my injury update, which I'm about to do. Cole Irvin. Cole Irvin is only owned in 52% of CBS leagues. If he's not owned in your league, grab him because he's going to get a lot of time now because John Means just went on the IL again with left forearm tightness. Strain, whatever it is, and he missed a big chunk of the season to start with that. It's a flare up of it, and Cole Irvin is supposed to slot right in. And so far this year, Cole Irvin he started 7 games. He's got an ERA of 3.15, a WHIP of 109, with 30 strikeouts and 45 innings. That's not a lot of strikeouts in those innings, but he plays for the Baltimore Orioles, and he can get you some wins. He can vulture wins the same way that Dean Kramer did last year. If you had Dean Kramer, he wasn't the best. He maybe pitched you 5 innings, but he got you a ton of wins because he played on a good team.
He had a bad outing this past week.
Yes,
Against,
he did.
3 innings and maybe 3-4 runs. He's ramped down though. Right in the beginning of the year, he was ramped up. He was pitching 5 innings, then he was pitching 7 innings. He ramped down his past 2 outings, 2 and 3 innings. But if Means is out for an extended time, he would ramp up again, and he would be the guy. But yeah, that's a good guy to take a gamble on for deeper leagues, though I think.
Yes, well, he is 50% owned in CBS, so even if you have him, you don't necessarily have to play him right away until he ramps up completely, but he's probably going to be in that rotation for a while, so it may be worthwhile to get him if he's available. You can probably get him cheap because people will see what he did last start and they'll be like, wait, I don't want a guy who had an 8 ERA last week, but you have to look beyond that. Look at what's going on. That one blip out, his numbers are actually pretty good.
All right, Ruben, what's the injury report for this week?
Well, I mentioned a couple of them already, so I'm going to go over them again. But first of all, we'll start with Xander Bogaerts. Xander Bogaerts is out indefinitely and on the IL with a fractured left shoulder. Bogart suffered the injury on an awkward dive on Monday. So far, he doesn't seem like he's dealing with any labrum damage, so hopefully he'll be able to avoid surgery. This only means that Luis Arias will get out of the DH slot and actually play some second base a little bit. But the guys who will gain some playing time is David Peralta and Donovan Solano as possibly the DH. So just look, if you want to pick up those guys, that's someone to look for. How long will Bogarts be out? He could be out months. This is not a week thing. This is probably more of a months thing, so just be aware of that. I mentioned Luis Robert. He's been out since early April with a grade 2 right hip flexor strain. He already began a rehab assignment, and the first pitch you saw in the rehab assignment, he homered. So his power is there. So it's a matter of let's seeing him being able to run. And you know what? If Eloy Jimenez is out a little bit for a while also, so maybe they have Luis Robert instead of play the outfield, have him DH a little bit when he comes back. So there may be some hidden pop in there. So I mentioned Sean Murphy. He's on the IL with a grade 1 left oblique strain. He's on a rehab assignment, and he also homered in his first game back. He can be activated as early as this weekend. So if you have him, I mean, you may want to activate him if you have two. If you can activate him on Friday, you may want to do that because he may play one game. And he may be a better option than the catchers you have. Zach Eflin was placed on the IL with a lower back strain. Rays manager Kevin Cash said he expects Eflin to be sidelined for 2 to 4 weeks. He had a similar injury that cost him 2 weeks last season, so this is nothing new for him, but hopefully it is nothing new. I mentioned John Means already about the left forearm strain. It forced him to miss. He was on the IL prior to opening day. We don't know how bad it is, but a flare-up is not a good sign. I mentioned Cole Irvin as a backup for him. John Gray, he's on the IL with a right groin strain. This is retroactive to May 22nd. He had an MRI. It revealed a mild strain. He would seem to have a good chance for returning from the IL in the minimum time, but we don't know yet. But the person who may take his spot is Nathan Eovaldi. He may be ready to return when John Gray's spot in the rotation comes up next. Joe Ross, he was placed on the IL with a low back strain. He was actually pitching pretty well. That's why I'm even mentioning him. We don't know how bad it is, but the Brewers manager Pat Murphy said it is something that bothered Ross for a while, which means he was pitching with it, and he's actually pitching pretty well. So, he's certainly probably droppable because he's a waiver wire guy. But there's another guy. They brought up a guy, Tobias Myers. He's already taken Ross's roster spot, and he'll probably take a spot in the rotation. And I'm going to end with Jose Urquidy. He's been on the IL with a forearm strain. He will make a run this weekend and could be activated by the end of this week. So hope this may help with the Astros' push to get better than they were so far this season.
And sometimes pigs do fly, as Byron Buxton, yes, that's right, Byron Buxton is off the injured list. Can you
over under, he stays off the injured list for 6 weeks.
No, I'll take the under.
I'll take the under also. But you know what? If he's off the IL and he plays well for a week, trade him. If you're in a trading league, trade him. I mean, what do you got to lose? You may not get that much, but if they show that he's healthy and he's playing and he's hitting, maybe you better get something from him and be able to bail on him if you can. But I mean, if I'm saying over under 6 weeks, I mean, how many more games is he going to play the rest of the year? I mean.
He had 2 homers the other day, so we know when he plays, and it's more of a power guy with a little bit of average, not much steals these days. But it's always the injury risk of him. But yeah, Byron Buxton, we'll see if he's see how long it takes. So what was it, May 23rd? Let's see if 6 weeks wins. We're both taking the under though.
I'm definitely taking the under for this. Yeah, he always finds something. I mean,
how about 4? Would you do 4? Would you take the under on 4 weeks?
No, I'm going to take the over on 4. I think he's a little bit better than that, but I still think when the summer gets really going and the heat starts going there, I think it's going to be an issue.
All right. Well, there you go. That brings us to the end of our episode. Ruvain, why don't you just tell everyone what's going on with you?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at MLB Injury Guru, where I tweet out injury updates as they come. And I'm going to mention all these injuries plus a whole bunch more in my article for Rotoballer, which comes out every weekend to help you with your fab pickups.
All right, and I'm Ariel Cohen. You can find my stuff over at Fangraphs, over at Rotoballer, at ATCNY on X/Twitter. And, of course, on the Beat the Shift podcast here. Next week, we will be doing a prospect episode. So we'll get you up to date on prospects that are going to come up soon, that are going to come up later in the year. Because sometimes you get some of the big picks from prospects, who you should spend your fab on, who you should not spend on. If you're able to pick up guys who have not played yet, we'll tell you the ones who you should be. And so that'll be a great episode. Always good to do one. We will be doing that next week. All right. Once again, thanks so much for listening to the show. Thanks, Ruvain, for being on the show as always. And from all of us here at Beat the Shift, we'll see you next time. Have a great Memorial Day weekend.
Thanks for listening to the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. Follow us on Twitter at _shift_pod.